to thank everyone for joining this little get together today. Grab a cup of tea. Might be a little while that we talk through things, but we're going to try to keep it succinct for today and perhaps come back on next time. I'm Stephanie Forcier, and I am the owner of Creators on the Crest. I'm a tarot reader and an intuitive counselor, so I have several different offerings along those lines, which I'll get into maybe a little bit today. I'm also a homeschool mom of two. And today I have on with me my friend and colleague. We were initially connected through the Black Earth Productions Blue Flame Healing Arts community. And so, Jungle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone out there, my name's Jungle. Yeah, I teach Kung Fu, I cut hair, I basically counsel people how to awaken their somatic intelligence through bioenergetic exercise, and that's my forte, if you will. So, been doing that since 1992 and still going at it strong. And of course, same thing with the hair cutting. Been cutting hair since 2004. Not as long, but about, still a substantial time. And yeah, just working with energy.
Yep, yep. And I'll draw in a little bit about because people are interested. We've both been to college. We both have different fields of study that may or may not at times relate to exactly what we do. A lot of times it blends in quite nicely. I actually studied biology in college, and so I can definitely relate to the physical aspects that you were mentioning and the somatics, and in a very body aware kind of way, and how it all connects together. And we'll get into a little bit of that as well. But I know also you have done some studies as well that kind of factor into your knowledge.
Yeah, it's mental health. I forgot to mention that I studied in undergrad and graduate.
Hmm.
So did my undergraduate in psychology and my graduate degree in social work. So, and
Yeah.
then about 6 years of mental health counseling.
Yeah. So there's those aspects as well. Now, I was in the corporate world for quite some time, so I learned a lot of the business aspects of things. I think I was in there for about 14, 15 years. And I am definitely glad to be an entrepreneur now, out on my own, doing my own thing. I feel much more aligned, with my calling. And I think you and I both have that kind of drive to really be able to do what we feel called to do in the world and work with people in the way that we know we're meant to, kind of
Ab-
outside of those structures, right?
yes, absolutely. Even when I guess I'm working in the matrix, if you will, you have that in the background, in the back of your mind or in the middle of your brain, thinking, how can I assert myself into that into my purpose while I'm doing the mundane seemingly superficial work out in the public. And
Mhm.
since, I'm very familiar with dealing with the local community, it happens to be very convenient for me to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of segues us into the first topic that I wanted to get into today. And so I think I'll start with, how do you define magic? Just putting it into your own words.
I would say having the foresight and the visual faculty and the capability to use your creative intelligence and all of your intelligences um, to see the bigger picture and how you're not just a material being, you're a bio-spiritual, energetic, magnetic being. And it's knowing how to how to break repetitions of patterns. It's knowing how to see the timeline shifts in energy and seeing how like seeing the seasons change in your own life and then others and outside of you. It's being able to neutralize that energy, being able to ta detach first and then neutralize that energy in order to make yourself grounded and then proper decisions following after that. So
Yeah.
uh yeah, having the foresight is definitely key. And sometimes it can be difficult to do that because you're stuck in a sedentary lifestyle or you know, sort of you're just stuck in a rut, you know.
Mhm.
So what I teach is very integral in that aspect. It can really help people break those cycles.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll go a little bit deeper into that. But I want to echo some of what you said. I might use a little bit different wording.
Hmm.
And, we're titling this Real Life Mages. So part of this is to kind of bust the myth of like that we're all running around in like the wizard hat and the fairy wings,
Yeah.
We're real people. We're navigating in and out of the matrix, as you said. We're working on creating a new reality, right? An organically aligned reality while we navigate what we're currently dealing with here on the planet. And so when I think of magic and what it means to embody that and be a mage, I first think about it's that inner realization that yourself, you are a fractal of the universe. And by fractal, a lot of people hear that and they think that it might mean a part of or a fraction of. But actually, a fractal, upon its magnification, so if you think about the microcosm and the macrocosm, right?
Yeah.
The fractal is a magnification of the whole. So, really understanding within, and I think you use the word bio, spiritual, energetic, magnetic being,
Hmm.
having that recognition that we are all, while we express differently and have such unique ways of showing up in the world, we are all these fractals of the greater universe. And once you have that understanding for yourself, you begin to recognize the level of radical self-responsibility that comes along with it, the commitment that
Definitely.
comes along with it. And that's can be tough for people because it really does mean that you are going to, as you mentioned, be working with things in such a way and utilizing your foresight in such a way and neutralizing in such a way that you're affecting the reality field.
Oh, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
like I think going back to what you were saying about knowing how to tune into yourself, it's a very personal journey. As it does relate to the collective, but it's not you're not basing all of your knowledge and intuition off of the collective really. It's not either or, it's definitely both. But first and foremost, I think it has to start from the personal standpoint where you're really in touch and in tune and paying attention with your own emotions, your own feelings, and not to be shaming them or hanging yourself in guilt and these type of trappings, mental trappings and emotional trappings, but to recognize them and acknowledge them. You know, it's super key to be able to do that because then you might be really good in one domain, like let's say intellectually, you can digest so much information that is going on in the world, and you're super aware in that regard, but you could be completely blindsided by your own emotional state
Mhm.
and just keep on repeating the same patterns there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely different than the logical, linear, everyday foresight that one might be thinking about, like it's the average person has, you know.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of dropped this huge concept of like, hey, you're a fractal being. You're like the entire universe expressed in a unique single being, right?
I like.
And sometimes when we think about, when I talked about radical responsibility, that does not mean that, oh my gosh, I got to take responsibility for everything that's happening. It starts with the self
Mm-hmm.
because that's where your empowerment is. That's where your intuition is. That's where your actual control is of being able to navigate is working on yourself first and getting yourself into that alignment. And it's going to be different threads that different people have to pull. If you are someone who's very high with that, like you mentioned, a high intellect, very analytical, they
Mm-hmm.
might be blindsided by something emotional. Somebody with a very high emotional intelligence could be blindsided by practical matters that they ignore because they're over here in this,
Exactly.
other vibe, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of what we talked about earlier before this even was about balance and balance of logic and creativity. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to kind of go into then what we both do a little bit here
Mm-hmm.
and how balance kind of factors into that. It definitely came up multiple times. Can you talk to me about what your clients experience and what they gain from working with you in the martial arts or working with the martial arts, and what are your recommendations for them as they take that mind, body, and soul journey?
Yeah, definitely. So what I practice and teach is Northern style traditional Chinese Kung Fu, and essentially it has to do with a lot of stretching, long movements, and a lot of footwork. So you might see like some other martial arts that are more stationary and short, meant for close combat
Mhm.
in like crowded areas, but this is more for long range. But that's within the martial arts world. But this doesn't just martial arts is not just for at least what I teach is not just for self-defense, but it's could be for cardiovascular health. It's definitely about merging the mind, body, and spirit together as one. And what I'm definitely recommending through that a lot of stretching, and I have like a set of which are not mine. I learned from a teacher a traditional Taoist teacher, um, who taught me everything that I know. And there's sets of techniques and stretches and forms that one can utilize to awaken their somatic intelligence. And oftentimes, what I basically, in a nutshell, teach is how to awaken the somatic intelligence, to purge out the traumas, which ties into the mental health piece,
Mhm.
and and yeah, these the and teaching people how we store traumas in our bodies that are below some people may have heard this concept where the conscious mind is the head, and then everything below the conscious mind is the unconscious mind, and that's the body. And
Mhm.
so like in the modern way of living, we are very stagnant. Most people are having office or desk jobs, so they really don't have they're spending 8 hours at the minimum inside of an enclosed room in front of a computer. So those are the clients that typically benefit the most from my teaching, but it really just benefits anyone. Um, and just knowing, and the teaching also, well, what I teach also helps people learn how to move their energy around and channel that energy in a specific direction, whether for healing or for self-defense or improving circulation or blood pressure, things like that.
Mhm. So can you talk a little bit first about the somatic? I know that's a word that maybe a lot of people that we work with might be aware of, but there might be people out there who aren't quite sure, hey, what is somatics? I know it has something to do with, the mind body soul complex and how I can work with my body and movement, but can you talk a little bit more about somatics?
Absolutely. So soma means body, from my understanding. It's another word for body. And so it's basically somatic intelligence is the body intelligence. And it's every organ, every part of your body has a brain, even down to the cellular level, as you would know, Stephanie. And so it's in our bodies, in these organs in our bodies, doesn't you don't you might think an organ is just like your liver, your pancreas, whatever, or your heart, but it doesn't have to be that way. It could also be the cell itself, as an organ. And if you think of it that way, it's a microcosm of those larger organs, and they have a memory, so your body remembers, it stores information. And when you're doing whatever lifestyle that you're doing or living, your body remembers that, repetitive repetition of routine and pattern. So if you start to break that up, that's where all the benefits start coming in, because yeah, it ties into epigenetics as well. So there's four terms that I teach in my classes. Usually it's the four concepts that I'd like to break down: chi, somatic intelligence, bioenergetic exercise, and the last one is um, epigenetics.
Mhm. Okay. Now, my experience with epigenetics is that you almost energetically put yourself in a space in alignment with your ideal health and wellness. It's
Mhm.
very similar to something I've been experiencing when it comes to manifesting abundance as well, is
Mhm.
to you place your mind, body, and soul. And this is part of magic. This is part of how we explore
Exactly.
this of who we are here. And then you are energetically aligning with that. So in this moment, you might feel discomfort, pain. You've got these things going on, these ailments. You could even be sick, whatever, but you're taking the time and the space to energetically place yourself in your full health, in that vision of your full health, whether it be a vision from the mind, a vision in your heart, a feeling, you're kind of aligning all those things in that way. And then naturally, the body moves toward that, moves into that, becomes that. So that's been my experience with epigenetics. I'd love to hear what you would expand on or how you might describe it.
Yeah, yeah, it all ties into the concept itself, but it can go either way. A lot of people think that our genetics are fixed and determined, and you are you have a predisposition for a certain disease or ailment, or maybe you have a predisposition for being, hyper um I don't know, in intelligent or sensitive or something like that. And it can go either way, but the thing is that the whole idea behind that I understand about epigenetics is that it's that you can actually alter the switches that are the genetic expression that are on your actual genome, um, your genomic expression, you can actually change through your lifestyle. So, like you said, like first it starts with the mind, the idea that using your visualization, imagination to start something new, and then fully applying that into your lifestyle. Creating new routines is fundamental to this whole idea of epigenetics, because yeah, you have these certain switches on your DNA expression, and it can be switched on and off. And there's something that I can't really get into the exact details, but I do know that there's a system called the second messenger system that's responsible for changing the physiology of the cell.
Mhm.
And then and sometimes it's really how you respond and behave and react towards your environment and experiences like that you live every day, whether they're traumatic or not. So you know that could we don't we're still investigating. Well, modern science is still investigating how, to what extent you can actually change your physiology, physical expression. And so, yeah, it's fascinating information. So,
Yes, very fascinating. And I want to talk a little bit about what my clients might experience or gain. So we understand now, kind of from the
yeah,
martial arts perspective, it's more than just punches and kicks,
yeah,
obviously.
definitely.
And there's probably a lot more we could go into. It might be a good time for me to mention if anyone who's watching this has any questions about anything we're talking about, please drop them in the comments. And we'd be happy maybe to meet again and take things further and talk about these things a little bit more. Because, we're getting into some really, really cool, exciting, fun stuff to talk about. But it's also it's complex at times,
Mhm.
right? For the
Yeah.
mind. Um, so I have been reading the tarot for, gosh, over 20 years now. And to me, if I break it down into its simplicity, when I do a tarot reading for a client, I am reading the energies that they are experiencing. So I'm not doing that from a place of me personally. I don't do it from a place of like needing to listen to some spirit guide or something that they have. I fully acknowledge there's other energies out there, but what I'm tuning into when I work with my clients is their greater being. So it's that multi-dimensional wholeness of them. It's really them as they are in their full, what I would call magic, right?
Mhm.
And I'm tuning into that energy when I do the reading. So the cards are wonderful because they give people a visualization. It is something that sometimes the mind likes to have for itself, right? It likes to have something to look at. It likes to have something to focus on, it colors and shapes and symbols and things like that. But instead of, always reading the cards like exactly how they're traditionally presented, which I honor that, and I absolutely blend that into a lot of my readings because that's the way the cards communicate. But I do leave space open for my client's greater being to give me a different angle or give me a different relationship on the archetypes that are presenting themselves.
Mm.
So
Definitely.
that gives me the ability to really give them something that they can puzzle together, even if it doesn't make sense to me. What I'm receiving, I give what I receive from their greater being, even if it doesn't make sense to me, because I know that it will make sense to them
Mhm.
eventually, even if it doesn't right off the bat. And so that is, when I get into these readings and I'm tuning into their greater being, that includes their physical as well. That includes the physical body. That doesn't exclude that. This isn't just, we're not just floating in the spiritual blissing out about things, we're really looking at the whole package here. So
Definitely.
that's a little bit different than some of the other readers out there. And I'm not saying there's right or wrong. Everybody has their own journey, but this is what I offer. So a lot of times I'll get the feedback of like, wow, that went deep, that went deeper than I expected, or wow, I didn't know that that's what this was. And so I like to talk about that because it helps people understand how I read and how I approach reading
Yeah.
with tarot, because the tarot is an art form. It's
Yeah,
an
I
art.
really like that because you're not being influenced by some other outside force outside of your higher intuition and self. Rather, you're tuning into your higher intuition and self, and you're using the archetypal energies, it sounds like. And maybe people don't in layman's terms, how would you describe like the archetypal energy? Or are they like, would you say they're like puzzle pieces?
Yeah. Yeah. So I could describe them maybe as like aspects of the self that have different presentations, right? So just to give a, very simple example, the mother is an archetype, the father is an archetype, and they have a certain energy signature, connected to them. And there's been a lot of work out there, and people have done amazing work on archetypes and sharing all about them, but it's the energy of what you're embodying, put
Yeah,
simply. It's
that's
the energy of that you're embodying or that you're trying to embody, that you're working toward embodying, right? That's that is standing out. I would say it stands out when someone comes to me for a reading and they have these questions or they have a theme and I tune into their greater being, the energy that they're experiencing or that they're supposed to experience stands out, kind of comes forward. And
yeah,
that's what I'm reading in the cards.
yeah, I like that. That's very simply put in that
Yeah.
definition.
Yeah, but you've got these characters, right? In the cards, you have men, you have women, you have children, you have these characters, these archetypes that dance and speak together differently, right? Depending on what the energy is and how the energy is speaking. So it's a really nice way, though, for people who really like to have those visuals to see something because it can give the mind a little something to put together. It kind of appeases the mind, even though it's more than just the mind, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
But I will say 9 times out of 10, when I'm doing tarot readings, very often the somatic aspect comes in or, recommendations for what the body needs. So it can be very physical, and that's something that I hold my own self to, even though I work with spirituality and energetics, the physical body and the physical body health is very important to me.
Yes.
It's something that, I've had my share of challenges navigating it
Like,
throughout my life, like many people. We all have had our
yeah.
different challenges, and it's a commitment. It's a
Hmm.
commitment to oneself. It's a commitment to our magic, right? And to that responsibility that comes along with it. So
Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the body is like it's the vessel for the soul, the spirit, and it's an expression of that. So they are interconnected, and yeah, you don't have to necessarily identify with the body solely, but it's about that all-encompassing idea of um, the mind, body, soul as one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
And it's interesting you say that because I do want to segue into, so you teach martial arts and you do a lot of esoteric studies and things like that. What are your recommendations for your clients on working with their energy on the physical and working maybe with that chi that you talked about? I always say this because I think of a chi ball, I think of
yeah,
like that I create.
that's a real thing. But yeah, I mean, for starters, I think fundamentally is to get used to stretching. And we have a core set of techniques that we teach. There's about 10 stretches, and they consist of lower body and upper body. Just getting the blood flowing and circulating and opening up the channels in the what people call the meridians. And there's always more to learn about how everything's interconnected, but that's the start of what I recommend my clients to learn is how to stretch, how to find their balance, whether it's like lifting their one leg up and standing on that one foot, it could be, or even standing with their both feet together in a attention stance is and while they're doing the stretches, it could be a little destabilizing, and the body's not used to moving around in different directions like on average. So just teaching my clients how to move their body in different ways, similar to yoga.
Mhm.
There's definitely a crossover there, but you know um And then there's the internal and the external martial arts. So the internal martial arts, I started with external, and that's primarily what I focused on for most of my martial arts career. But I also, in sync with that, I learned a little bit of internal and developed a strong enough foundation to understand the principles of internal, moving energy around, manipulating energy, and you showed the chi ball, and that's definitely very common in Tai Chi, because you got these movements that are very circular, and then moving them
Yes.
and learning how to push, just feeling into your own aura, your own energetic flow, and then you it does, it's hard to put into words sometimes, but it does spark, it sort of like it releases and then also brings in the right type of flow, that in terms of energy,
Mhm.
um and it in terms of like connecting the mind and the body together, uh and you just grow in this awareness of your own higher self. And it is also another form of self-expression. So I definitely recommend a lot of people do Tai Chi in tandem with the external martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And one of the things that came up too was you had mentioned like a nature connection. So can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about what you might? I know sometimes, we're meeting in classrooms or we're meeting in different indoor spaces, but what about outdoors and that connection?
Oh yeah. So if you're indoors a lot and you're in an office, or you're definitely cut off from nature. Most of us are in this modern way of living. So getting out into nature is fundamental. Sometimes you might feel a little bit, whether or not you're inside or outside, you might have a sense of flightiness or anxiety. That's that air element.
Mhm.
And so I definitely recommend, as part of my training, to get into somewhere like the woods, where that would ground you in the earth element. And yeah, doing the martial arts, I would say, when you learn how to move your foot, like there's a lot of footwork in this form of
Mhm.
martial arts that I teach, which again is the Northern style Chinese Kung Fu, traditional. Um, you learn how to open your foot before you step forward, or you get into these postures and stances that ground your energy into that earth element. And it's kind of like, even some of the practices where they're like stationary, are to do with grounding. It's just simply imagining that you're a tree and that your roots are growing into the ground. So it's definitely very elemental there.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
Fire, you have as a part of your, what the Hindus call the Kundalini. I would say maybe there's a little bit of crossover crossover there, but that type of center of your body, there's definitely different types of centers in the body that can be activated, and some have to do with different elements like fire, the lower chakra, the lower chakras that you can ignite and awaken. And then others have to do with, you have even the way that you might have your tongue in your mouth, or your um parts of the mouth, that have like a water element, or they have the elements inside. The way that you actually hold your tongue in your mouth while you're meditating is actually a thing. So it taps
Yeah,
into.
I'm thinking of like the yoga ujjayi breath where you drop the tongue down from the roof of the mouth and you kind of open the back of your palate and
Mm.
breathe like you're through your nose, but it's almost like you feel that mouth, kind
Yeah.
of breathing. It opens up, there's different kinds of breathing techniques, but yeah, very familiar with, yeah, it can activate different things for you physically.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, these practices have been going on for thousands of years. I mean, it's not a lot of people on the outside criticizing the spiritual community as like a lot of woo-woo and that type of thing, but it's there's a science to it that is a lot more complex than just, entertaining the idea of energy.
Right. Right. Excellent point. And I think working with the elements has a lot to do with the practical application because everyone can see, and experience fire and the heat from fire and water. And as they drink it or as they take a bath or dive in the lake,
Mm-hmm.
we experience the elements. And that's something I wanted to mention about. In addition to the tarot readings that I offer, I do a closure process as well.
Mm.
And this closure process, as you were talking about, the different recommendations that you have, this closure process that I offer, it embodies all the elements. We actually use the power of our voice to evoke very specific words that are empowering and authoritative for ourselves. We use a crucible to burn and transform. I was thinking about, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But it can be transformed. And so we're very much using the element of fire. We flow through a particular pattern and that's the water element flowing through to identify some of the blocks and obstacles, and then the ownership of when we're bringing closure to something big, like a big pattern, like we talked about earlier in the whole being a real life mage is about being able to recognize patterns and catch those things. And then closure kind of offers something to do about it, especially if it's something big for you. It can really help. It can really help ground that closure that you're looking for. Closure is really about the end of one cycle so you may begin another. And then people often think of, oh, I need closure in relationships, right? That comes up quite a bit, but it's so much more than that. It can
Mhm.
be that. It can be where, you do have these connections to a person and you need to be able to move on and you're having a hard time and you just need that extra embodiment of that. But it can be closure with generational patterns. It can be closure with fears,
Mhm.
anxieties, different kinds of things like that. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to mention the elemental aspect though, because I think that's an overlap and it is very magic is all encompassing of those elements.
Oh yeah. No,
Mhm.
it's a lot of overlap. And like you said, just to reaffirm what you were saying, those are relationships can be in like the people form, or it can be a relationship with fear or a relationship with,
Mhm.
anything. So that's what a lot of people struggle with is being able to end one cycle and start a new one, or, end one lifestyle and start a new one. So,
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to talk about, because you talked about a little bit about recommendations for your clients, I did want to talk about briefly just, and you said this happens naturally during the martial arts, some of the martial arts processes, but one of
mhm.
the techniques that I use is called the circle of the magician. And it can be, for me, it can be a very intentional practice where I'm very intentional about it. And it's almost like a ritual for me. Oh boy.
Oh
Whoa.
wow. That
Whoa.
just happened.
I forgot that Zoom picks up things now.
That's very, very cool.
So I guess the universe wanted me to pay attention to that. Okay, maybe it's time. Maybe I'm due to do this practice again. It's time for a ritual. No, but like it can be that, but it can also be very natural and very much something that I incorporate into every day. For me, I have like the Cancerian water sign energy in my soul spark. So I love to do my energy work in the shower or in the bath, And for me, I find that it's amazing how with a little bit of intention you can move your own energy and actually set up for yourself like a sacred, protected, sanctified space
Hmm.
around you and within you. So maybe talk a little bit about the martial arts movements, because I know that kind of happens naturally. People build that for themselves as they're doing some of the movements.
Gosh, yeah, protection of one's energy is so fundamental as well. So yeah, I relate to that. A lot of the practices that you're doing, and it just comes out in a different way when you're doing martial arts because it's kind of like drawing the circle. You are, as you're going through your movements, techniques, forms, your martial arts forms, you're doing the postures, you're showing your techniques out there, whether you are very focused, and it could be on your punches, could be on your kicks, but essentially you're creating ritual when you do that. Because
Hmm.
especially if you're incorporating it in your everyday routine, anything becomes a ritual, but
Yeah.
to a certain degree. But this is like, um, so I just like drawing the circle. When I'm doing my forms, I can just feel the protection and sealing the energetic bubble around me, if you will,
Hmm.
and you just feel that empowerment from that. And yeah, the more you practice, the better. But it's it's really about sealing the energetic force field, if you will, around you that kind of relates to drawing the circle.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you can add anything in there ceremonially if you want to or not,
Right.
but yeah, so it just
Yeah.
happens, like you said, naturally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Setting up your energy in such a way that you can experience the world and others from the most balanced place within, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The
Yeah, exactly.
most clear and balanced place you can reach from within. Yeah.
Yeah, really. It does center your body, it centers your mind and your spirit. And it it like you said, it doesn't make you walled off to other energy or people, but it actually it does ground you, but it at the same time will make you more aware of your higher faculties.
Yes.
So,
Maybe it's like another way to describe it would be like it's like a filtration device.
yeah.
So it is going to filter out things that, aren't in alignment with your energy field, but it will let through things that you are in alignment with. So it's not, like some solid wall. Now I want to ask you real quick, and then we'll kind of get into closing this up. But since I probably have a lot of parents watching, and I'm a parent, can you talk a little bit about you? I mean, you've been doing martial arts since you were younger, right? So how does this? You keep talking about how much it does to the mind, the body, the soul, the balance, and everything. I keep thinking about how wonderful is this art form for kids? And can you talk a little bit about your experience, either as yourself as an adolescent or child, or as you see other children benefiting from martial arts?
Yes. It's absolutely huge. A lot of my colleagues I learned from, and well, my mentors, I would say, and teachers I would learn from, they were coming from more of a, well, broken upbringing, you could say, and it helps those individuals as well as children that have maybe come from a broken family or however, or from someone that has come from a very average family or a normal or a cohesive family. But either way, for children, it just provides, it's like what I like to say is the school of life. So, you know, in institutions today, they're learning academics and they're learning how, not really so much how to think, but what to think. But this
Yeah.
is more teaching you about, your own self. It's bringing kids into, awareness at an earlier age to take on the outside world and how to navigate it well. And it provides them with virtues. It instills, we have different principles that we teach. It's wisdom, humility, virtue, and martial arts, of course, and I believe it's honor or courage, one of those. But it teaches all those fundamental principles and gives children self-confidence to deal with things. I know for myself, it definitely helped me with my identity and, self-confidence, dealing with the public and being able to emotionally regulate their anxiety. It really does provide it's like the best form of medicine, if you will, that without
Mhm.
taking a pill. And I just think that it really instills like self-discipline. You don't need to beat somebody over the top of the head to be able to um,
Mhm.
in ingrain that, but it does, provide that structure for children. It provides it allows them to be able to stand up for themselves, both physically and mentally and verbally.
When we talk about working with energetics, a lot of times when you are able, whether you're learning as a child and it provides those things, or as an adult, I work with adults mostly. Adults will come to me and they'll have questions about their kids, and I'll look into those energies because they are the steward of the child.
Yes.
But it just, a lot of what we can do with energy is shifted in such a way that we avoid
Yeah,
those
exactly.
situations.
Yeah,
Sometimes things are still going to happen. I get it. There still might be a car accident here or there, and things are going to happen. But when we really get into these energetics, we can actually teach ourselves how to stay in that balanced center. And then our energies, the magnetic aspect, we're not attracting
the
that stuff,
polar.
that stuff that's going to cause a problem, right? So
Hmm.
it works if you work it.
Yeah, it really,
Like you said, the more you practice. And that is one of the things about when I think of being a real life mage too, that's part of the responsibility. You don't just sit back and say, "Oh, I'm a mage. I do magic, I do spells." It has nothing, to me, it has nothing to do with that stuff, right? That's like,
yeah, that's extra if anything.
yeah.
But
And
and
there's things to go into there, and there's a depth to all that. But this is about ownership, authority,
hmm
recognizing oneself as this greater being
hmm
in this, three-dimensional reality field that we live in, and what we can bring from our greater being in to make
exactly.
this world a better place
Yeah.
and align with the organic timeline,
Hmm.
the natural world and the cosmos, right? So
That's
it's big stuff. And so I'll just encourage anybody that's listening. I know it's a lot and there's so many different directions we could take it. Put your questions down below and we might get into those kinds of things in the future. Can you just share with me any final thoughts you have and how people can reach you?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted a quick piggyback off of like what you said about just teaching children. It really does also teach them how to de-escalate situations. And we often do teach what you said, walking away from the problem it before getting into any kind of physical altercation. So that's really important that children understand that it's not, you're not going out there to beat people up and or just people in general. Um, uh, it's not about, you know, pushing around your ego. It's about actually taming that ego and not killing it, but having a healthy ego. So yeah.
Right.
The last thoughts, I guess, would just be anybody listening to to try to open themselves up to cultivating a discipline, regardless if it's martial arts or if it's tarot reading or yoga or um, rock climbing, dancing, anything that they really can get their mind and body, into, which allows them to focus and just incorporate that into their everyday lifestyle because it's part of the structures that we create for ourselves that are gonna make us who we are and help us figure out who we are actually in terms of our own identities and not getting caught into just one but expanding ourselves into our greater potential. So yeah, that's good. I'll leave it at that for now.
I feel it's important, to invest in one's self-care and invest in oneself with some of these practices. And it's not always necessarily encouraged in the world, and you got to be in service to everybody else, but you also have to take care of the self first so that you can offer that amazing service and your gifts, talents, and abilities to other people. So whether it's taking the martial arts course or, investing in a closure session or tarot reading, these are ways to honor yourself, to get to know yourself better, to deepen your relationship to yourself so that then that can extend to those around you and so forth and so on. And it really has a beautiful vibration that gets put out in the world. It's not always as easy as we think it's going to be. Usually it's much more challenging.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I feel it's just so worth it to come to understand yourself in a greater way, right?
Yeah.
So,
And don't limit yourself. That's the main
no
thing.
limits.
You're so much greater than what you think you are at this current moment.
Yes, yes. You hear that in the exercise and physical world from a lot of the coaches, no limits. And they might be talking about physical and how much weight you're lifting, but it goes for the spiritual and energetics as well.
Hmm.
Truly, you are limitless. Truly, you are an all-encompassing greater being, a fractal of the universe, and that's no small thing. So
Yeah.
really cool conversation. Okay, so how can people reach out to you?
And starting with Instagram, I would say it's I'm under the screen name Oversoul 1156.
Okay.
So you can find me there. It'll be a brown icon with me and standing in front of a building.
Mhm. Okay. All
Facebook.
right. We can link them in the description too below. We could put that out for people. So, but I'm at Creators on the Crest pretty much all across the board. So Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, it's at Creators on the Crest is where you can find me. And so it's been a pleasure talking to you and going through some of these deeper concepts and what I consider to be fun and interesting. So I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope our audience has enjoyed it. That's why we're here. It's to bring this to the table in conversation. So just want to thank you for taking the time today and thank our audience for tuning in. And, hopefully we'll see
Thank
everyone
you.
next time for another episode.
I had a lot of fun, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me
Thank
on.
you.